So I thought staying there and helping him was what I was supposed to do. And at that moment, I got out of God's will for my life.
Faith and Failures Podcast.
Now, did you, of course, you said you were young. Of course, when we're all early 20s, our brain hadn't even developed yet. But did you feel at the time that you were stepping out of God's will, or you just thought maybe this was the next step of where God was leading you to in that moment?
Yeah, I was confused. I thought...
Did you have reservations on it, or you just thought maybe...
because my heart wanted to go back home to Shelley.
Yeah.
But yet I wanted to preach, and he needed help.
Yeah.
And so I stayed there, and I got a job, and that during then was when, I say the devil tried to kill me several times in my life, take me out where I wouldn't do God's will.
Yeah.
I got a job with a bridge company, and I don't know if y'all, but anyway, I ain't gonna name the bridge or anything, but anyway, it's a real high bridge.
Yeah.
And we were at the middle of it, and from the middle down to the Mississippi River was 1 mile. From the bridge down to the water was 1 mile.
Wow.
And
that's a long
drop. It's a real tall bridge, real tall. And there was a Spanish guy there I was working with, and I was able to witness to him for a couple of weeks, and then he accepted Christ.
Huh.
And so I know God still used me in them times. And so one day we were fixing to put another section together. And so the concrete truck, see, inside the bridge, there's concrete trucks can be inside the bridge, not out there where the cars would be, but inside there, it's a whole nother deal. So we drive our trucks through there. But anyway,
I didn't know that.
We were in there, and the black guy with the concrete guy, he swung the bucket around, let the concrete out.
Yeah.
And it hit me and the Spanish guy. And the Spanish guy went over the side, and the black guy barely caught me and pulled me on. He saved my life and barely pulled me back on, because I'd have been gone too. They never found the Spanish guy. Once he hit, they never found him. I quit that day, and I just told the pastor of that church, I said, listen, I'm going home. Things are just, I don't know. It scared me. And so I traveled back home and got my little brother. He had a 69 Chevrolet pickup truck. And, them big old steering wheels got steel bar in them. Well, we're coming back to get my little bit of stuff so I can go back home. And we're probably 2-3 miles from the church or my apartment where I was at. And a guy in the gas station comes straight out. I never even hit my brakes. When I hit him in the side of his driver door, it was a full-fledged 55, 60 mile an hour crash. It knocked him out of his passenger door of his truck. And I didn't even know this happened. The steering wheel hit me between my nose and my top lip, and I bent the steering wheel in half. Should have broke my neck, should have knocked all my teeth out. The motor of our truck come in, so my little brother hit the floorboard, and the motor come in and pinned him in there. So I jumped out and run around to his side to get him out. Once I got him out, all the bystanders were looking at me and said, man, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. I didn't get hit. And they're just, I guess they're seeing my lip just instantly swell up, and they're looking at that steering wheel. And I took about 2 more steps, and then I passed out.
Yeah.
And then when I come to, I was in the hospital. And Shelley made so much fun of me, and it done went down by the time I got home to see her, but my lip was swollen up over my nose.
Holy moly.
And I mean, it didn't knock my teeth out or nothing, but it could have killed us.
Yeah.
So we left, and, and that pastor was, so I got my eyes on man from that day forward. I moved back home, and then me and Shelley got married, and we tried to go to church with the kids off and on. Then all that happened with that other preacher and different things. And I told her, I said, listen, can't do it. I can't be the only one that's trying to to do right. So when the girls got older, I stayed out of church off and on. And then we started going back to Gladewater Church of God. It's another pastor there.
Mm-hmm.
And God started tugging on me to preach again. Every time he's always wanting me to preach. And so I started preaching and got to where it was about every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. Everything's going good. You know how when you just feel something's not quite right?
Yeah.
But you can't pinpoint it. You don't know where it's coming from or what. So we're sitting there in service, and these two kids are demon possessed. Now, I'd seen this through church from a distance. I'd never been hands-on or never been confrontational with Satan in this form or fashion. We get up there, and the pastor calls me up there with them. And, you know, my life's right. I'm, you know, but I've never done it before, you know, fought with Satan like that. And so we're casting demons out of this boy. And then it's time to cast the demons out of this girl. And she raises up in a man's voice. And she looked straight at that pastor. And she said, "Why don't you climb on me now? You didn't mind climbing on me in private." And he falls backwards and jumps backwards, running, and shoves me up in that devil's face.
It sounds like your wife when she said, "I don't care what's going on. I will push all y'all down, and I will be the one that makes it out."
He pushed me up in front of that, and I rebuked that demon.
Yeah.
And he went out, and the girl got delivered. But Satan was trying to tell on that pastor.
What came of that?
He got away with it for a long time.
So it was actually true.
It was actually true. And it come out later. Now he don't have his credentials anymore or anything. It took like 20-something years. And it come out. And but we knew something, you know, was bad, wrong. And after that, I told Shelley, I said, "I can't do it no more. I cannot, all these." So I didn't go to church, and I made a statement right then. I made it to God.
And that was the one we were just in.
Yes.
Sunday.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
And I made the statement to Shelley and God and everyone else that knew me. I said, "I'm done. I'm not done with God. I love God, but I'm not preaching. I'm not ever stepping foot in another church. I'm not going to allow people to hurt me no more. I'm not going to allow people to, I don't want to see them live these two lives."
Now, did you know the information was true when you said that, or did that come out later about that pastor? About him?
No, it came out later.
Okay, so so what was the straw that broke the camel's back in that scenario? Was it?
I was self-employed, and back then God had blessed us so much. I mean, we were making a lot of money.
Yeah,
a lot of money, and they pulled from us a lot.
Yeah,
and they would only bring us self-employed people up to lay hands on us, so we'd make more money and give more money to the church. And if me and Shelley ever done anything,
did that work? We'll lay our hands on each other. We'll pray at church, son.
Me and Shelley wanted to do things in private,
right? Yeah, 100%.
And they
like the Bible says.
Yes, but people wanted to showboat different things, and then they would even come to us. "Hey, we've got this need. Can you take care of it?"
Oh, they bring you in when it has something to do with needing money.
Yeah, and then I hated the fact where they put us up here because we're self-employed, and I promise you, a church will go further with regular layman workers than self-employed people. I promise you that. And they got left out and pushed down because they wasn't bringing in bulk money. And I told Shelley, I said, I'm done with people.
Priorities are wrong. And that.
Yeah, I'm done with people. And so
there wasn't an actual like something happened.
Nothing major.
It was just kind of a slow kind of.
Yes.
It's time.
If I'd have ran into some preachers and different people that really were true to God and really lived the same life in church, outside of church. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it just didn't exist anywhere around me. I mean, my own brother-in-law was a pastor.
Yeah.
And he slept with people in the church. And he still drank and I hate to say it, but Shelley has an uncle that was a Church of God pastor, was selling drugs out of the back of his car. Well, I was a pastor. So I seen, the devil made sure I seen so much that it ruined my calling, because I beat myself up so bad because I stepped out. I stepped away from God because of people where God probably could have used me to help every one of them, but I didn't see that, and so it was easier for Kenny to just run and be alone and
revert back to that.
To just,
I'm good by myself.
I'm good by myself.
And my little,
just my little circle, and I took care of my wife, my girls, and didn't let nobody in close to me. No friend. I don't have friends. I didn't want nobody, didn't need nobody. I was self-sufficient. Now, God had blessed us with a beautiful job. I mean, our business has taken off because I bought another business that God wasn't a part of.
Yeah.
And
who was it? Just for the listeners that says they didn't want to do nothing with it. Who was it again? Was that your wife that said?
Yeah, I asked Shelley. I said, "Are you going to help me run this business?" She goes, "Oh no." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "No, I'll help you with the one God gave you." She said, "But this one here, Kenny's getting." And I said, "No, it's going to be fine. I'll prove to you. I'll show you. I'll make this work." Well, I lost every bit of money I ever made. And, but I learned some valuable life lessons through it.
I bet.
Through it. And so I got out of that situation, but through that, God showed me, He said, if you will stick to what I give you, it will flourish. And that's what I've done. And I stayed out of church for 17 years and was bound and determined. I was not going back.
Now, for those who don't know maybe your recent story, so I'm a pastor of a church, and on Tuesday mornings, we're going to segue into his current story. On Tuesday mornings, we have prayer meeting at 10, and Tuesday nights, we have it at 7. And so I, on purpose, every single Tuesday, I walk the parking lot. I go out and I anoint the corners of the church, and I pray God's blessing. I anoint the doorpost walking in and out to the sanctuary and into the church itself. I anoint every doorpost in that place, actually, for every classroom, for every any little offices, anything that we have that is people go in and out, I anoint it. Specifically because when the angel of death came and the children of Israel, God told them to protect their families, to put the blood of the lamb over the doorpost. And so I'm anointing that doorpost so that there can be no evil or no death enter into the place. I also go to the little house right there and I anoint their entryway as well. And Jessie actually, on Tuesday nights when she can make it from work, she goes and she anoints, like the gate out there now, she anoints the gate post. And so we got that place oiled up and slick. So if you ever walk in and you slip, it's just the anointing. Well, one of my prayers that I started when we took over the church was that the cars passing by, we're out on 1844, the cars passing by, that not man, but the Spirit of God would draw people in to this church. And jumping a little bit around, last Sunday we had 139 people show up. That's including kids and everything, and there was 115 in the sanctuary. We're almost at capacity. But I think it's because of prayer of people that believe God can do what He says He can do.
Yeah.
And that when people are about the vision and the mission of God, not about building man's kingdom, but about building the kingdom of God, God blesses that. He does things beyond, and he pulls us out of our comfort zone and puts us in places that we never thought we would be again. Because when I was younger, in my early 20s, before I got married for the first time, I was filling my daddy's pulpit. He'd let me preach. I was his youth pastor. He would let me preach, and sin crept into my camp. And all these things along the way where I let men dictate what God was trying to do in my life pulled me out of ministry. And then I went and tried to do studio engineering. Failed out of that. My family fell apart. She left me from Orlando and took my kid. All these things that I let the devil in, and it just manipulated and twisted up everything, every call that God had on my life, every position that God was trying to place me in. I allowed it to happen. It's nobody's fault but my own. But I allowed outside influences beyond the Spirit to pull me out where God was trying to pull me into. And so that being said, I tell Kenny this a lot, and I say it from the pulpit a lot, is that we're seeing right now in our church the product of prayer on purpose. Now, I said I would pray and point to the street out there, and I would say that I wanted the Spirit of God to pull people in. And now we're going to go back to Kenny's story that literally is intertwined with answers to my prayer. So, go ahead. Tell them about you driving by the church.
Well, I'm a paint contractor, so I travel all these back roads and side roads and everything, going to all these jobs and stuff, and knowing that I'm not ever going back to church again or anything. I've made that very clear.
Yeah.
I'm driving down. I start working for doing a lot of work for Union Grove School, and we live in Hallsville, so my quickest route is down 1844. And so for 2 years, I'm driving through there, and where the church is now, it used to be called the White Fence Farm, and I guess I was always attracted to there because we painted the fence out front one time and traded them for a quarter horse. And the horse deal didn't work out very well, but anyway. So I'm driving through there, and it's just a metal building church, and has a sign out there that says, Connect. And I'm just like drawn to it, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Wow. So anyway, I'd come back, and I had to look over there every time. And then it got to the point to where I felt such a tugging on wanting to know about this church that I even slowed down one day, and I was going to pull in and just sat in the parking lot and say, all right, God, what are you pulling on me for? What do you even want? But they had orange cones setting up in the driveway. There wasn't a gate there.
Because young bloods come in there and peel out of the parking lot. We come in, and there's like marks everywhere. So one of my specific prayers, I would pray to God, and I still pray it to this day, that people would drive by and the Spirit of God would pull them in, and they wouldn't even understand why they wanted to come in.
Yeah. And that was me, because I had no clue why I was drawn to this church. And if it would have said Church of God anywhere on the sign.
He found out from his sister that was already coming there for months.
No, she found out from me.
Oh, you found out from your mom, didn't you?
No.
Who'd you find out from?
Right here in this living room when we was taking the growth track.
Oh.
Me and my wife looked at each other and said, oh, this is Church of God?
I didn't remember that. I didn't know that.
But we were already hooked in. Hey, God had already. So.
Oh, man, that's great.
So I knew God was pulling on me, but I wasn't about to tell my wife or anybody else that God was tugging at Kenny's heart, because I was fighting this. I even went as far as to drive from Hallsville straight down Highway 80 and stop at every cotton picking red light and all that traffic so I wouldn't have to drive by that church and feel that tugging. But then when I would leave the job, without even thinking, I'd come down 1844, and there it is. So I had this pulling on me. And Shelley, one evening we're sitting there, and I am a creature of habit. At certain times, everybody knows where I'm at that knows me. They know what I'm doing and what time I'm doing it. And Shelley come sit by me one evening, and she said, now listen, she said, I don't want you to be upset or anything. She said, but it's been a long, long time. And she said, I'm fixing to go back to church somewhere. Well, I said, I was probably didn't say anything for a minute. I'm sitting there thinking, getting mad, pouting. So finally, I think she said it again. I said, that's fine. I said, don't expect me to go. And if I do go, I'm only going to sit on the back row. Do not expect me to go every time the doors are open, because that's not happening. And don't expect me to do anything. I'm not doing it. And she looked at me and she said, babe, I would never ask you to do any of that. She said, at all. I said, all right, then we understand each other.
I'm glad we had this talk.
I said, now where are you going? She said, well, I'm going to go to Grace Creek and try it with Kayla and Mike. I said, okay, I'm not going. And I didn't go. So she went and said she enjoyed it and everything, and said she's going to go again. And I said, by this time, I already know my wife well enough. She wants to go, and she's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I looked at her, I said, Shelley, I said, if you're really going to go and you want me to go every now and then with you, I said, I didn't want to tell you, but there's this little church on 1844.
Softened him up a little bit.
I said, I'm pulled to it for some reason. I don't know why. I don't want to be, but I'm pulled to it. I said, can we look them up and just see if they have anything online so we can listen or whatever? And she goes, yeah, we can do that. So we pulled up Brother Stephen's message and the songs. And I mean, my guts are just churning inside of me. And then he preaches, and I mean, it was taped, but he was preaching straight to Kenny that day. And I told her, I said,
it's cool how God does it.
I said, I don't know. I can relate to this guy. I said, I can already relate to this guy. And so she said, well, let's go there. So, and to back up just a little bit, this last year, I'd come down with leukemia, and they say there's no cure for the one that I have. And that's how much I guess I knew God was still tugging at me, but I didn't want him to, because I even told God by myself when I got diagnosed with that cancer, I said, see, now I never can go back to church because everybody's going to think I'm only going because I got cancer.
Yeah.
But God has a way of breaking everybody down and getting his way.
Yeah, he does.
And so me and Shelley went to that church service, and I had no clue that that's the church my sister and brother-in-law Rocky were going to, and Rusty, because I knew they had started going to church somewhere, but someone told me on 1845, that's all the way across town.
Oh, 45.
Yeah, so I was fine with that, because I wasn't going to church with no family. So I was okay with that. So, and we go there, and they're there. And I'm thinking, great. So we sat by them, and my brother's up there singing and goes into preaching. He gives the altar call, and I feel the most heavy tug. Every song they sang was about being healed from cancer. It was about everything that I needed in my life, renewing yourself. It was all his message, the songs, everything was that. I mean, it's like God set the service up for Kenny.
Yeah.
And I felt that pulling, and I said, I ain't going up there. There ain't no way. A new church.
Service number one.
Hadn't been in church in 17 years. First time ever back in. And all of a sudden, it's like the Holy Spirit just grabbed my shirt. and picked me up. And I went to the front, and I thought I was going to whisper to you what I had, and you was going to whisper to us prayer. And you told everybody, you said it out in the whole entire church.
I apologize.
No, you don't have to apologize for that. And I felt God not only renew me, it's like he just, you take a tape and you hear that and fast forward everything.
Yeah.
They're everything I've ever been through and just wrung me out. Because I've never been right since then. I've never been the same since that service. God has changed my entire DNA. Because even when I preached, even when I went to church before, I still was reserved. I still didn't go to functions. I wasn't around people.
Yeah.
If I preached and went home. That was the end of it. And so you laid hands on me, anointed me with oil, you and your wife, and y'all prayed for me. And I felt the healing virtue begin to flow through my body. Now, been several months.
Yeah.
And my numbers still were getting bad and getting worse.
But they plateaued. They
plateaued, didn't even budge. And then they started creeping up again.
Yeah.
And so me and Shelly, we didn't quit. After that service I didn't miss a church service since. But we didn't come to yours every time.
That's the caveat.
I went to another church.
He cheated on it.
Well, I wanted to make sure because I felt a renewing, and I said, this time I have to be right with God. I have to let God handpick.
And he said that too. You said that you went somewhere else. He's like, man, I felt like I was cheating. I knew I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I mean, I would want to know if I'm going to put down roots somewhere.
Right.
I need to know.
Yeah.
Because I know being a minister, you don't have that luxury to try different stuff and things like that. So, yeah, by all means. And then, what did you say? Hold on. What is it that you said? Oh, it was the first lunch we went out to. Wasn't it? Yeah, first time you and I, when y'all came back and you said, we're here, we had just had somebody who was doing our couples thing, and they had just stepped down, like, I think the week before, or maybe 2 weeks before. And there's always a need for something like that.
We never even knew y'all had a couples deal.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, she had hurt her back or had an issue, and so they had been out for a while because she was in such pain. And I think they maybe came once or twice, but you didn't know who they were. And they had stepped down, and we go out to eat lunch. And I'm just getting to know him. He's just getting to know me. And he brings up, he says, I want you to know we're here. We're not church hoppers. When we say we're somewhere, we're somewhere. And so he says they feel and I think the specific verbiage you used was burden for couples. And the reason that stood out to me is because I tell my leaders, before they were a part of the leadership, I tell my leaders or my board members as well, we're looking for a worship leader right now. And I say, if they don't have a burden for it, I don't want them in that position, because that will not sustain them, because there's good times, that's great, and there's bad times.
Right.
But if you have a burden for something, you'll stick around.
Whether
when you catch the vision, you're a part of the mission, you understand the assignment, just like in a marriage, the bad and the good, it all happens at some point. But when you have that burden, the burden will sustain you through the bad. And he used that verbiage, and he didn't know, and I didn't tell him then, that we just had an open spot. Now, coming from somebody who just said that he told God and everybody, well, and then now I'll go, but I ain't gonna do nothing. Don't expect me to do anything. And so, kind of, you can continue on there.
And so we bounced around a little bit, but when we knew we were there. And God had just turned me around to where it wasn't enough to just come on the Sunday morning. And so I come to the prayer meetings in the mornings, and, just got to, I don't know, I bet we wasn't there 4 times probably. And you talking about out of the norm for me.
That's like, go ahead. I'm not going to say anything to you.
His wife, the pastor's wife, didn't get to come to church. She wasn't feeling well or something that morning.
Yeah, that's what.
And so
now, before he says what he's going to say, I get to church, or I'm headed to church by myself. And if you're part of our denomination, you know that I usually don't show up at any Church of God things because I don't like going if my wife can't go. Like, to me, that's a covering of protection. Well, I'm going to church, and that is in my mind, and I'm thinking, Lord, because I right now, I said a minute ago, we're looking for a worship leader, because right now I'm the one doing it and preaching. And so it's very hard for someone to be leading worship and lead on a leading instrument. And then if there's altar or there's you can't be in 2 places at once. And so I'm praying on the way to church over the service, and I'm saying, Lord, I need help today. That was my exact prayer to God. I need help today. And then this happens.
So I'm sitting there, and I feel the Spirit moving on me and tugging on me. And we hadn't been there 4 times probably.
Very new. Like, people knew his first name.
Right.
That was about it.
If they knew that.
Yeah.
And so the Lord spoke to me and wanted me to go up and say a few words and have people come down for prayer and healing. I said, Lord, there's no way. There's no way I can do this. And I kept fighting it, and he was going on with the songs and everything, and it was getting stronger and stronger. And he said, and later we were talking, he said he gets to his last song that he's supposed to be finished and move on with the service. So finally, and so he's at that point, and I'm at the point where I said, all right, Lord, if you really want me to do it, he won't stop.
Well, at that moment in time, we kind of have a system set up to where when I do my last song, I'll nod to whoever's doing the welcome to visitors and offering and things like that. And I did not feel that release yet. Like, I felt like there was I didn't know what. I had nothing on my mind except I couldn't stop yet. And so I just kind of kept playing. And I don't even know if I was at the microphone. I was just kind of playing.
You had your eyes closed.
Yeah, I had my eyes closed. I wasn't really doing anything.
There just for a minute.
Oh, did you?
So I got to where if I didn't get up, I was losing my breath at my seat. I was gasping for air because the Lord wanted me to do this, or I was going to faint, I guess. So finally, I just said, all right, Lord, I have to do this.
Yeah.
So I go up there and I stand in front of him. He's got his eyes closed. He's not even seeing me. So finally, I reach up to barely touch his elbow, and he opens his eyes, and I said, brother, I have to say something.
And I didn't jump or anything. This is an important part of the story. I did not jump because apparently we have a safety team, some safety people, and apparently they were shadowing him because, like we said, nobody really knew who he was. And so, they're there to protect the pastor or whatever, because you never know who comes in the church. Our doors are open to anybody, so we got to be prepared for that to happen. And well, apparently he didn't do it by what was protocol.
Right. I didn't know.
That was what was told to him later, but he felt God had to tell him something. Now, he didn't really know the system there. You probably didn't even know who to go to if you were supposed to, because you didn't know really anybody else either.
Right.
You just knew that God had something for you to say. And the guy told him later, he told me later, after the service, he met me in the parking lot, and he said, I was watching, and if you would have jumped, it would have been a whole different kind of service.
Right.
But I didn't. It was God. That's all. It was 100% God. He knew you had to say something.
Right.
He knew I couldn't quit because I could not take the service to the next place where I knew it needed to go.
Right.
I felt it needed to go, but I didn't have the capacity to do both positions.
Right.
And so he made it where you couldn't breathe so that you would.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for me to even remotely get up and do that after 17 years of not even being in church,
I was looking at some of the videos, actually this morning. I was editing down the one from last Sunday, because once we go on the live stream on the church YouTube channel, we leave it where it's worship and everything until like Friday or Saturday, and then we'll edit to where it's just the message. And one of those I went back and had clicked on was that exact service.
Really?
And I heard you start like, normally I don't do this. Or this ain't Kenny. You're setting them up because you're like, listen, I know I'm new here. This ain't me.
Right.
But it was 100% ordained by God. Like from start to finish, from my prayer in the car till I got to the church. Like it was all of his story led him up to be here.
And then how I preached on a whim, that you talking about out of my comfort zone.
So now remember, he said he wasn't going to do anything if he go to church, to church with his wife. And once they went, he mentioned growth track earlier. Once he went through our growth track, which is, it's our core values, core beliefs, and we talk about spiritual gifts, what your spiritual gifts are, and then we kind of share all of ours. We kind of make, it's a group activity. It's also a little bit of our Connect kind of membership class type deal. So if you want to become a member or you want to be a leader and serve in that capacity, you have to go through our growth track so that we're all on the same page. And so they went through it, found out we were Church of God, and then what, your mom was talking about the church or something, and your sister was standing there that had been going longer than he has.
Yes. And she said, it's a Church of God. It was shocked.
She didn't know. I don't know how to, which we didn't put it on the sign, but I mean, I mentioned it from the pulpit, I know. But so now, after they went to the growth track, and then we have a 90-day period where we make sure you're going to stick around. So as soon as that 90 days was up, we had a which we're going to do in September again, a membership service, welcomed y'all in, and your daughter and son-in-law at the same time. So that burden put you on my radar, and then we asked y'all to be, now they're over our married group. And so for somebody who doesn't want to do much, he's doing a lot.
Explain how I had to preach on a whim.
So 2 weeks ago, the Thursday of that week, I was working. My first job was at 10. My last job was at 8:30 that night because she wanted to do a night shoot of some house in Tyler. So I had zero time at all to do any sort of like actual sit-down meal. My wife thinks I got food poisoning. Maybe I ate something bad from a gas station. I don't know, but I normally don't get sick. Like I'll get like maybe some head or stuffy nose. Like right now my nose won't stop, but most of the time it's allergies or something like that. But this was like in my stomach. Like I felt like an alien movie, like something was in there. And it wasn't coming up. It wasn't going down. It was just like stuck. And so being the man that I am, I don't want nobody to know that I'm sick. Like normally if I get sick, I won't say a word. I'll do whatever I got to do and nobody will ever know it. And this was something else. I waited. Also, all day Friday, I felt this. Like I almost passed out one time. I had to put cold water on my back. The sound started coming back and the room stopped spinning. And I was like, what is cool? It was like one of those where like I could barely talk. When Jessie called me, she was asking if I was all right. Because if she watches this back, because she wouldn't, if she's watching now, she's actually in the back, she wouldn't come home and take care of her husband. She stayed at work. But, and so I was feeling terrible. So Saturday I wake up and I'm a little bit better, and it felt like whatever it was moved down. But anytime I would get up, I try to do some work in the office. I'm like, okay, I'm not like yesterday. I'm a little better. And as soon as I started moving around, it was like, oh my gosh, it would hit me again. And then really, really bad headache. And so I waited till, I don't know when it was, I finally texted you about it or called you or.
Well, I called you.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And Shelly had talked because y'all had to cancel the growth track.
Yeah, the growth track was that day.
So
yeah.
I called you to tell you we're going to forfeit our couples deal. Right. So y'all, because that was more
for that next Saturday, because they had a couples thing. And so they were saying, we'll just reschedule the growth track, and that way, because that's to them was more important, and we appreciate that. And
so I asked you, I said, what was your plans for the service?
And we both kind of laughed, which we had done it before when Jesse and I had to miss, was we had just rebroadcasted a live stream and they would put it on the screen, and it actually, the people in the media booth sent me pictures and the altars were full. I was like, well, I guess it landed twice. But we kind of laughed, and I said, I think I told you that. I said something, I was like, unless you got something, do you?
Yeah, and I couldn't lie to you.
Dead quiet. He didn't say a word for a few seconds. I'm like, I was thinking in my head, like, hello? Are you still there? I don't hear anything. And then what did you say?
I said, well, I can't lie to you, brother. I said, God had given me a message to preach. I hadn't put it on paper even yet, but it's been in my head, my thoughts every morning, every night for about a week or so. And so I couldn't tell you I didn't have a message. But
so something that he said was last minute. God had already been working on it. It wasn't that bad. But yeah. And so
that was Saturday afternoon, and I had to preach Sunday morning, and it was strictly God Almighty touched me.
So tell him about your blackouts.
Yeah, he laughs about it. But every time I've ever preached in my life, you can tell, and this is my first time that I've ever seen myself preach, because I've never been anywhere where it was taped or anything. And you can obviously see when I get up there and it's me and I'm nervous and I'm just getting going. And then you can see instantly when the Lord takes over and handles me, because I wasn't even seeing Kenny up there. I mean, it was.
So did you pick up on your challenge in vocabulary when you'd say something? Huh? Did you say, you know what I'm talking about? Huh? Answer me. Like, get him, Lord, get him. That was a good service. And then he talked a little bit about his cancer. Then he felt impressed to have people come down specifically for cancer in the altar. So
the Lord had spoke to me when he gave me the message. I knew I was going to preach it somewhere, because he laid on my heart about the altar service. And I've had messages come to me, but I've never had something about the altar service come to me. And because the Lord wanted us to enter in one mind and one accord for anything that need prayer for, but he wanted it one at a time, like each section, and he wanted to do a work in it. And so that's what I followed through with. And so I included myself in that cancer deal. And then that next Thursday was my cancer appointment. And
now, that Sunday, did anybody pray for you, or did you just pray for other people?
No, Vernon anointed me.
Did he? Okay.
Yes.
Because usually in our altar time at our service, we cut it off just for people's privacy, so it's not out there. But
yeah,
so
yeah, Vernon and them anointed me and laid hands on me, and so that Thursday was my cancer doctor appointment, and so I do my blood work, and we go in there, and he comes in, and he's a little quiet, the doctor, and he's an Indian doctor. He's a little quiet and kind of has a puzzled look on his face, and me and Shelly's looking at each other like, and normally he's more talkative. And he going over everything, and he's saying something, and Shelly said, well, what are you trying to say? He said, well, I don't know, other than his body's responding well. And Shelly looks at me and said, we responded to what? You ain't had nothing but Jesus.
Yeah.
And so he turns the screen around, and he starts showing the numbers, and Shelly said, what are you trying to tell us? He said, I'm trying to tell you that all of his cancer numbers dropped down 50%, which now is at the level when they first found out I had leukemia. I mean,
take that, devil.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
And I hadn't been near as fatigued. I have had great days. I mean, I feel so good. God is doing a work. And then when I preached that message, that's what God showed me. He said, in this message, I'm going to show you that I could have left in time and went and healed Lazarus before he died. But I wanted to show a miracle and show how good my Father is.
Yeah.
And he spoke to me as I was preparing. He said, Kenny, I'm going to heal you. I'm just going to tarry a couple of days. But
That's
I'm
awesome.
going to heal you.
Yeah.
And I accept it. And he's healed me 50%. So there's someone else out there that still needs to see my life go through something through this, because we've all struggled so much in our lives, and we know what Jesus done for us.
Yeah.
He done the ultimate sacrifice, and the beatings and everything that he suffered for us. I'm not going to let a little cancer get me. If I can't suffer that, he at least saved my soul, Stephen.
Yeah.
He saved I don't need nothing else past that. I don't need anything. He saved my soul. So if I can't suffer a little bit on earth for him, for what he done for me, I'm willing to.
There's this, I think we're singing it Sunday. Let me look right quick to this text message I sent out to the group. I think it's available. Yeah, there's a song called Available. And one of the lines in there, we're going to sing it Sunday, is, for the one who gave his life, nothing is a sacrifice.
Man. I mean,
I've never thought that way before. You know, we talk all the time about, as Christians, we need to sacrifice. We need to give up this, give up that. Really, if you break it down,
yeah,
we don't ever have to give up a whole lot for his name.
Hardly nothing.
Especially here in America.
Right.
And most of the time it's pride.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
It is.
But so any more to the story? I mean, we led up literally the last 2 weeks.
No, that's...
So I want you to, just for a second, there are definitely different segments and different chapters of your life. And looking back from where you are now to where you came from your start to just your middle, not the end, what would you say to somebody who has went through the same thing, or has been in abusive relationships, or had that abusive parent, or who has went through a time where they've been betrayed or hurt by church people, or went through a time where they've been in the marriage where they were the selfish one and they were you have all these, it's almost like these different people that have compiled, but have, in my personal opinion, like Jessie asked me, she used to ask me a lot when we were first married. She was like, I guess because she thought I was better than, but she would say, where were you? Like her whole early adult life. I said, I was being refined. I would not have been the man that you needed to bring honor and glory to you. I would not have been the man to love you in the way that I love you now, to appreciate you in the way that I appreciate you now. And I feel that that's a constant part of our journey, that we, you know, you can always look back and see, I should have did this different, but I can see where it molded me to be the man of God or the woman of God that I should have been the whole time. But I've got a hard head. Now, I don't have to learn lessons twice, but when I learn them once, I'll learn them real good.
Yeah.
So what somebody's watching right now or listening right now, what would you say to them as far as how they should be looking at it, or better yet, the hope that they can have, that even though they have doubts, even though they've been hurt, that not every church is the same,
Right.
and to not base their definition of God by people who's hurt you.
Right. Yeah, because, you know, when I do look back at all the struggles and all the things that I went through, you know, I guess the Lord knew I needed to go through all that to get to the point where I am now, and even having the cancer to get me to the point where I say, all right, God, nothing on earth matters now. No one, no thing matters. My life has turned to the point to where, God forbid, but even if you turned away, my wife turned away, Kenny's not turning away.
Yeah.
I finally turned a leaf where God, going through all the things that I went through, and you know, I'm so sorrowful that I allow Satan to use people to keep me from God's work. But I read something the other day, and God showed me that, Kenny, I'm never too early, and I'm never too late. So he's just on time.
Yeah.
And it was just a perfect time for him to take me. I finally got to the point where I let go and let God. And I totally sold out to where now I want to help man that struggles.
Yeah.
If you struggle, before I looked for your struggles so I'd have an excuse to stay home and feel good about it, okay?
Yeah.
Now, if I see your struggles, I want to help you. I want to help give you whatever it takes, whatever I've been through. I want to help you get to that next level to where we can be strong together. And then God is wanting to put an army together.
He is.
He's doing it right now, that will stand for his name no matter what you go through, no matter what you suffer through. We're not turning our backs on him. This is who Kenny is. And for once now, I can literally say, I'm back in God's will.
Yeah.
For my life.
And something that you said that I've personally been a product of just in the short time that I've known you, is it something very personal in my life that I was struggling with, that I talk about it, but I never had been vulnerable to somebody about it. And there was a time where I was, for some reason, talking about pornography, the pull was so heavy on me, and it kept trying to, I know some of y'all may think pastors are perfect, but we're not. It kept trying to pull me and pull me and pull me, and it was like a constant struggle every single day. Even if I wasn't failing, it was like it was there,
right,
knocking at my door, saying, I know you can hear me. It's like a little kid. Tristan, when he was real little, I was in the bathroom, had the door locked because kids will walk in on you. And he's knocking on the door. What are you doing? What are you doing? His little hand coming. What are you doing? I mean, that's how it was doing. Like just trying to get in and find a way in, find a crack anywhere it could. And you quit going to church because of man. And you just said that you were willing to help. And he had a conversation with me. He came over one day. And it's just a testimony of what God has done in his life and where he has placed him, because I needed somebody to talk to about something that I didn't know how to talk to about. And it took him having to approach me another time where he was like, man,
very hard.
How am I supposed to say this to my pastor?
Right.
But as soon as we had that conversation and I had a dialogue with somebody, this is the devil's game, pride and shame. And if he can get you to lock yourself out and seclude yourself from the herd so that you won't have accountability, so you won't let anybody in your life, he'll use anything he can to make you feel so ashamed that you feel that, oh, if I tell anybody or I talk to anybody about my struggle or my issue or my pain or my suffering, it may have been 20 years ago, it may have been last week. If I tell anybody, they won't look at me the same again. And I literally felt that in my heart, that if I as a pastor ever say that I have a struggle, even though I announce I have a struggle, but to say one-on-one I have a struggle, it was a different ballgame. And he waited 2 weeks to come. It was about 2 weeks?
2.5, 3.
2.5 weeks. And the time frame that he told me that was some of the hardest struggling I've ever had in my life. So let that be maybe a open door to some of you, that if God is prompting you to, and listen to me, this does not give you right to berate people with scripture and tell them how they're a sinner and dirty and they should be ashamed, because then you're being the devil's hands and feet. But that was some of the most, to me, it felt like for some reason it was the hardest struggle I've ever had. And it was weird. It was, it's hard to explain, but it was just like every single day, like I was just getting punched in the spirit. And then as soon as we had that conversation, you hadn't really said anything to me about it again since. And I told him, and this is what y'all need to understand. You need to have somebody in your life that you can trust, that will pray for you, that will be there for you, that reads the word, that knows the word and understands who God is and is led by the Spirit, so that if you have an issue, struggle, hurt, or pain, or you're in a dark season of your life, you can go to that person and you can be able to talk to them about the struggles that you have.
Because I haven't told anybody since that day, and wasn't going to ever until you just announced it, but that was never leaving my lips.
Well, and here's the thing. When he had this conversation with me, first of all, I could see his eyes when we were talking. We were actually sitting on these two chairs right here, and there was worry in his eyes that I was going to pull back from him or it would damage the relationship.
And the devil even convinced me that you would ask me to leave the church,
which is a real struggle. I mean, that's a real
I
thought.
didn't want to leave.
And it really happens.
Because when I came to the church, all I ever felt compelled was God wanted me to help you in some form or fashion. And he just wants me there to help you. I don't care if it's praying for people. He wants me to help you. If I preach every now and then, he just wants me to help you.
You know, it's crazy. The very thing that stepped you out of God's will was what you're doing now.
I know.
But now it's God doing it.
And I'm not looking at man because I want to help man.
God does the, I'm telling you, man, God is so cool. But, and so what I did, when he came to me in love, and I could see the worry in his eyes that he didn't want to upset me. He didn't want me to feel like he was attacking me. He actually came to me with the posture of love. And what did that do? That helped me receive what God sent him there to say to me. He didn't come boldly. He didn't do nothing. He was just like, hey, he was like, you got a minute? Can we sit down and talk?
Because I thought patching a hole in your wall.
Yeah, I thought it was something about like his family, or there was something going on. Because people do this to me all the time. They say, hey, you got a minute? I know immediately when they ask that, it's going to be about them. I never thought for a second it was going to be about me. But it was exactly what I needed in that moment. I have not had the pull since he had that conversation with me.
I felt released too for you.
And I'm not saying, well, yes, I am. I'm saying it's directly tied. Sometimes we ask for God's blessing, but we're not willing to release the burden of sin in our lives so that we can have the bandwidth to carry it. I'm not saying it's directly tied, but I'm kind of saying it's directly tied, is that I think it's no mystery that the church has exploded in the last few weeks like it has. And you actually said that, I think, in that conversation, that sometimes we will harbor sin, or we will hold on to it, not to be in sin, but scared to let someone in to be exposed in that way.
God can't fully do what his full work.
He can't. If we cover it up, it remains an open sore.
Yeah.
But exposure, if you ever cover your a cut or something like that, and you never let it breathe, it won't fully heal. It needs to breathe. It needs to be open. It needs to, you have to touch it, put medicine on it. I mean, you have to do different things. You have to clean it so that it can properly heal. There's nothing that will get infected faster than a wound that is not cleaned. And this was a wound in my life. Like some of y'all know my story. I used to be addicted to meth. Porn was a part of that world all the time. And so still to this day, and I tell my son this, porn is damaging to relationships. It's damaging to your mind. It's damaging to your heart. It's damaging to your spirit. And it leaves scars that, if not dealt with years later, it will echo into a new life you're trying to live in God. You may be saved. You may be walking with the Lord, but sinful nature is real. And so I told him this, and I want to challenge you this. If you've never opened up to somebody about your struggle, if they gossip, if you hear them talk about other people to you, they're going to talk about you to other people. So be very careful who you tell and open up to. But I want you to understand what I told him is, I said, I want you to be that person for me, that if I start struggling again, that I can come to you and not be judged, but be held accountable. Being held accountable and being judged are not the same thing. Two separate things. So I don't know if you're struggling. I don't even know why we got on that topic, but just if anything else, God's led you here, and I'm very selfish. God led you here for me because I really feel like that bondage has been lifted.
I know it has.
And it's weird. Like I saw, and it wasn't revealing, but they just had like massive boobs with cleavage. It's summertime, if y'all don't know, and you women dress like hookers. Sorry, I'm blunt. And I don't know who the person was, and I think it was on my business profile. They're probably a realtor or something, but they're like taking the picture up here, and it's just like I immediately went and unfollowed them. And when I see things like that, I have not clicked into, but I back out of. And I'm disgusted.
You took a growth step.
I did.
Mm-hmm. I felt it.
And it was, and all it took was an open conversation with somebody that I didn't really know that well.
And it took me being obedient that I didn't want to be either. You know?
But God does things. God will.
He uses everybody. I was at prayer meeting before this even happened because I was struggling. God, how do I do this? How do I do this? And Howard got up from praying.
Oh, yeah.
And he looked at me, and it confused me at first. And he looked at me and he said, Kenny, I have a word from you, or for you. The Lord, what you've got in your heart, he said, it's okay to release it. And I mean, that's all that God put the seal stamp. So I knew. And then I remembered you had a hole in your wall.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fix it, and you didn't have to run off that day. And I just felt it was right. And I needed it off of my chest.
So God used a kid putting their elbow through my wall at the house like 2 months ago. But God is good. God has a plan, and his word promises, he promises that everything, both good and bad, will work for the good of those who love the Lord. And you got any closing remarks or anything?
I'm good, brother. I appreciate you letting me on.
I'm excited for what God's doing. I'm excited that people that we're pretty close with at church but they're new to me for sure. Right. But they've come in and they just completely missed. And it reminds me of the way that like fabric is made, how it's intertwined. Yeah. And the tighter it gets, the stronger.
Right.
Nothing can be broken. Nothing can be pulled apart.
I mean, my brother Mike is joining the church and involved, and I never preached a word to him. He just saw my life change, and he had to get a part of it.
He had to come see what was going on.
He did.
Now, how many of your siblings are in the church now?
All but my sister Sherry, and she's going somewhere. And
she lives here in Longview, right?
She does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's somebody who didn't want to go to. They only. It's funny. Twice a year, you saw each other, talk to each other, wouldn't say you love them, and now
we're all loving each other
every single Sunday, sometimes multiple times a week.
Yeah.
Bible study.
Man, it's so good.
Yeah. The last little note. If you don't know God, give your heart to God. If you've been hurt, if you've been mistreated, do not base your relationship or your definition of a church or the body that is the church on a moron that goes to a church.
That's right.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, make sure that if you are new to this channel, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or the group, we have a group of over 750 people. The YouTube channel now has over 1,300 subscribers. So if you don't know, go to the YouTube. You can do YouTube/Faith and Failures, and you can subscribe, as well as any links below that will lead you to podcasts, any link that takes you to an Amazon affiliate, or you can give a one-time or a monthly through PayPal that will go for the furthering ministry of the gospel. And this is a ministry. Also, if you ever want to come on the show, whether you believe like me or whether you don't, you have an open opportunity and an open door. You can email me at faithandfailures@gmail.com. Reach out to me if you're a Christian writer. I've had several writers on. I would love to interview you and platform you and lift you up and give people your information. Thank y'all. We love you, and we will see you next time.
Faith and Failures Podcast.